we had the opportunity to come into His house to worship Him.
上個主日我講到關於被提嘅情形，因為主耶穌應許喺大災難之前嚟到翻嚟，將我哋提到空中脱離呢個災難。
And last week, we were talking about the rapture that mentioned that Jesus has promised that before the Great Tribulation, He will come back and take us to meet Him in the air.
我哋知道大災難咧係將會發生。
We know the Great Tribulation is coming.
因為睇社會裏面世界上所發生嘅一切嘅嘢咧，都知道咧係越嚟越明顯係應驗緊聖經裏面嘅災禍嘅預言。
As we look around what's happening around us, we know that the fulfillment of this tribulation is coming.
我今日補充少少，然後繼續講今日新嘅題目。
I will supplement a little bit before we go on to a new topic today.
我越嚟越明顯嘅意思係乜嘢咧？佢其中一樣嘢就係。譬如呢個啟示裏邊嘅預言講到呢個敵基督嘅假先知會為佢做一個像，呢個像咧係俾人敬拜。
And I want to point out today is that at that time that the Antichrist will build himself a statue, an image, and require people to worship it.
嗰個獨特嘅地方咧就係呢個像咧係可以講説話嘅。
And what is unique about this image is that it can speak.
所以世界人咧覺得好稀奇嘅，就敬拜佢。
And the people saw this and was amazed. So that's the reason why they worship it.
當然，當我哋睇到呢個機械人啊，現代科學人嘅科技所發明嘅機械人可以講説話嘅時候，我哋知道咧呢一個聖經裏邊嘅預言咧係真係會快要應驗啦。
And when we saw the advances in technology, that we created the robots or androids, we know that the fulfillment of this prophecy is coming soon.
另外就係上個禮拜冇講到嘅就係關於呢個地震同埋海嘯嘅頻繁。
And last week we didn't mention this, but there's also the more frequent of earthquake and tsunamis.
喺路加福音第21章第25節裏邊所講到咧，我哋因為聽到海中嘅波浪嘅響聲嘅時候咧，啲人就慌慌不定。
That in the book of Luke chapter 21, verse 25 or 25 says that the nation was perplexed at the roaring and tossing of the sea.
喺好多年以嚟，我一頭霧水，唔知道呢度所講係乜嘢意思。
And for many years when I read this, I didn't understand what it meant.
自從喺2004年12月26號嗰日咧，印尼呢個大嘅海嘯嘅時候咧，嚟襲擊咗14個國家嘅時候，我哋知道係乜嘢嘢。
Until in 2004, December 26th, in Indonesia, that we saw that the tsunami have affected 14 nations.
原來呢個海嘯未嚟到襲擊之前咧，你聽到個海裏邊好大嘅響聲嘅。
Before that, the tsunami reached land, you can hear the roaring sound of the sea. 跟住日本嘅海嘯2011年。And in Japan in 2011. 當啲人聽到海浪嘅英文聖經講個 roaring， 好似啲獅子咁咆哮嘅聲音嘅時候，啲人就會好驚噶啦。And people become afraid where they heard the roaring of the sea.
之後我去過呢個 Grenada 2次啊，每一次都去海灘嘅時候，去到海灘嘅時候諗下有冇地方可以走得上去高山嘅咧咁樣。
Since I've been to Grenada twice, and then the 2 times I was there on the beach, I was trying to find a high place where I could run to.
其實主耶穌2000年之前已經講咗出嚟，我哋聽到海嘯嘅時候會係好驚慌。
And that Jesus had already told us about this 2,000 years ago.
呢個末世裏邊嘅其中一個現象。
And this is the signs of the end time.
另外一樣嘢就係其實喺呢個未信主裏邊嘅人嘅思維咧，都係可以見到呢一個跡象嘅。
And we can also see hints in the thinking of the non-believers as well.
中意睇電影嘅睇電影嘅人知道一類嘅電影嘅分類咧，就叫做咧世界末日嘅電影。
And those who like movie, they would know that there's a category that's called apocalyptic movies.
有名嘅，譬如係 The Day After、Independent Day 啊、Armageddon 啊咁之類嘅。但係無論如何，睇呢個世界嘅樣子咧，問題唔係有冇呢個大災難發生，係幾時會發生。
And when we look around the world today, the question is not whether there will be a great tribulation, but rather when it will happen.
同埋幾接近呢個災難嘅開始。
And how close are we approaching this time?
路加福音第21章第28節裏面所講啊，主耶穌話：當你見到啲災難嘅跡象醞釀嘅時候咧，你要提高警覺，因為知道你得贖嘅只會嚟到，主耶穌會快快嚟。
And in book of Luke chapter 21, it says, 28, it says that when these things began to take place, stand up and lift up your heads because your redemption is drawing near.
唔係叫我哋驚，係叫我哋挺身昂首，咗啊，企直啲嚟到咧向天嚟到仰望。
And it's not telling us to be afraid, but rather tell us to stand up and lift up our heads towards heaven.
響哥林多前書第15章裏面所講到，佢話就係呢個眨眼之間，一霎時之間咧，我哋身體會改變。由短暫嘅變成為永恆嘅。
That in the 1 Corinthians chapter 15, it tells that in a blink of an eye, that our body will turn from something that is temporary into something that's eternal.
主耶穌會翻嚟呢個世界嘅空中，未到降到地上嗰就7年之後先至返到地上嗰，嗱降到空中嚟到將教會被提出去。
At that time, Jesus will be in the air, not yet reaching the ground of earth, but that's 7 years later. But he will meet the saints in the air.
雖然係咁樣，講到有大災難將要發生。
And then after that, there will be the Great Tribulation.
但係雖然講到呢大災難將要發生，但係咧仲未立刻可以開始。
Even though that the Great Tribulation is coming at that time, but it had yet to begin.
今日我所要講嘅就係講到咧有2件事要先發生，然後大災難先至開始嘅。
And what I want to talk about today is the 2 things that need to happen before the Great Tribulation.
然後我就講到結論啊，就係呢個就係今日題目就係到底被撇下可能性。
And today my title would be At Risk of Being Left Behind.
讓我哋讀一讀呢個經文先好嗎？
Let's read the scripture first.
帖撒羅尼迦後書第2章第1節，弟兄們，論到我們主耶穌基督降臨和我們到他那裏聚集，我勸你們，無論有靈、有言語、有冒我的名的書信，說主的日子將要來到，現在就不要輕易動心，也不要驚慌，人不拘用什麼法子，你們總不要被他誘惑。因為那日子以前必有離道反教的事，便有大罪人，就是沉淪之子顯露出嚟。
2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 1 to 3. Concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our being gathered to him, we ask you, brothers and sisters, not to become easily unsettled or alarmed by the teaching allegedly from us, whether by the prophecy or by word of mouth or by letter, asserting that the day of the Lord has already come. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way. For that day will not come until the rebellion occur and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the man doomed to destruction.
父神，我哋感謝你賜俾我哋嘅話語。
Father Lord, we thank you that we have your word.
懇求主你將你嘅話語打開，俾我哋能夠見得到你嘅你要對我哋講嘅心意。
And may you open the words that we know what you want us to know.
向我哋吹號，警戒我哋。
That you have sounded trumpet to warn us.
俾我知道你將嚟嘅日子快近。
And to know that your day is coming soon.
開啟我哋嘅心竅，使到我哋向你有個回應。
Open up our hearts and we can respond to you.
我哋咁樣禱告，奉主耶穌嘅聖名求。
We pray all this in Jesus' name.
阿門。
Amen.
雖然講到呢個大災難要快發生，但係有2樣嘢一定要先發生，然後大災難先開始嘅，所以我哋就要着眼睇呢個咁嘅兆頭。
And so we need to look at the signs of the Great Tribulation. Before it happened, there are 2 things that must happen.
第2樣嘢先就係呢個大罪人要顯現出嚟，即係大罪人就係敵基督。
And it says the man of lawlessness must be revealed. It says that the Antichrist must come.
我講咗幾個禮拜，今日唔講呢個大罪人嘅問題。
And I already talked about it for several weeks, so I will skip that right today.
第一樣嘢就係呢個離道反教。
The first thing that must happen is the rebellion.
英文叫做陰定本黃家定本就係 a great falling away， 但係呢個其他譯本好多就叫做 apostate， 就係咧背叛佢哋嘅宗教變節者。
And a lot of other translations would say we call it apostasy, meaning they become backslidden or apostate.
原來當主耶穌未翻嚟之前，一定有一樣嘅發生，就係響信徒當中有大規模嘅人咧，係離開佢嘅信仰，係反叛佢嘅宗教。
And before Jesus coming back, there will be a time where the believers will turn away from God in mass numbers.
就係一班信主嘅人，佢會扭轉咗過嚟，去叛變佢哋最初嘅信仰。
And that a group of people, they will turn around and turn away from their belief.
馬太福音第14章第12節裏邊講到，佢話大災難開始嘅先兆咧就咩？其實咧就有啲人係因為不法嘅事增多，許多人有愛心就漸漸冷淡咗。
And during that time in the Matthew chapter 24, it said that many people's heart will go cold because of the lawlessness that's around.
所以呢個係主耶穌降臨之前，大災難開之前要發生嘅事，先至有大災難開始嘅。
And this is the sign that will happen before the second coming of Christ and also the Great Tribulation.
今日我哋要研究下，到底呢個咁嘅背道離教，呢個大幅度離開主嘅嗰個時間到咗未咧？
And today we want to analyze whether that the time of this great rebellion has arrived.
如果你睇教會即係普世嘅教會，如果有好多人唔開始跟從神，離開主嘅時候，咁你知道主耶穌翻嚟好近啦。
And you look around the world today and see that there are many Christians who have turned away from God, and you know Jesus is coming back soon.
用我今日間接嚟到回答頭先所個問題，就係呢個咁嘅大幅度嚟到反教時間到咗未嘅間接嘅方法嚟回答。
And I will indirectly try to answer the question whether the great rebellion has arrived.
我個解答方法就係去問另外一個問題，就係到底係咪所有基督徒都係會被提咧？
And I answer by asking another question: is whether all Christians will be raptured?
係咪所有信主嘅參加教會嘅受過浸嘅都會被提咧？
Is it all those who've been baptized, going to church, will be saved?
你估你一家人嘅當中，或者呢個整間教會當中，係咪會全體嘅都被提咧？
That whether that your family or this church, the whole church will be raptured?
你估
What is your take?
會唔會全體被提咧？今日主耶穌再嚟，突然間成間教會空咗。
Is it possible that everyone that suddenly we're meeting here and we're all gone?
網上都參與嘅又突然間冇晒。
And all those who are online as well?
我真係希望係咁樣樣，尤其是我哋呢間教會嘅人，應當所有個人都係被提嘅。
It is the heart of the desire of my heart that will be so.
呢個係我嘅心願。
This is my desire.
但係好可惜，神嘅話語唔係咁樣講。
But unfortunately, that's not how it's written in the Word of God.
因為多次主耶穌多次咧，都係教導我哋同埋警告我哋咧，就係咧，我哋要小心，因為佢嚟嘅時候好似賊嚟一樣，係我哋想唔到嘅時間，我哋防不勝防嘅時間，佢就嚟噶啦。
And through Jesus' teaching and his warning that day will come like a thief.
而如果我哋冇準備好，好似呢個咁嘅賊嚟到光顧我哋仲冇準備好嘅時候咧，我哋就係會咧係受虧損嘅。
And that will be unprepared and will be harmed.
所以到底我哋係唔係被提嘅人當中，係視乎我哋係唔係警醒等候主。
It really depends on whether we are watchful. That it really depends if we are raptured or not. It depends on if we are watchful in our lives.
到底我哋係咪一家人都係被提？到底係咪整間教會嘅被提？係視乎我哋有幾多嘅百分幾嘅人咧係警醒嚟等候主。
And it really depends on what's the ratio or percentage of us are watchful of the coming of the Lord.
原來要睇一睇到底我哋有幾多百分比嘅人咧係去個比率咧去被提咧，其實聖經裏邊有少少嘅線索嘅。
There are little clues in the Bible to tell us about the ratio of people who will be raptured.
馬太福音我講幾個經文先。馬太福音第25章裏邊講到10個童女嘅比喻，剛剛頭先聚會之前都有人講過啦。
That in the book of Matthew chapter 25, we mentioned about the 10 virgins.
當呢個新娘嚟到嘅時候，只有5個聰明嘅童女，個燈裏邊係有油，然後 佢係能夠迎接到呢個新郎嚟到。
And only 5 wise virgins, they have enough oil for them to wait for the groom to come.
其他5個係冇準備好油嘅，係束手無策。當個新郎嚟到閂咗門之後，佢哋去出去買油，翻嚟個新郎唔俾佢哋入去。
And the other 5 were unprepared. They need to go out and get more oil. And when they return, the doors already closed.
所以主耶穌所講嘅，似乎係好似一半人係被接納，一半人係被撇下。
It seemed that Jesus said that half will be accepted, and half will be rejected.
喺呢個路加福音第17章第30節裏邊，俾我哋同樣類似嘅線索。
And also in Luke chapter 17, it's give us a similar clue.
第30節裏邊所講嘅，當人子顯現嘅日子咧，亦都係咁樣樣。然後講到2個人喺個床上高，一個被取下，一個被取去，一個被撇下。
It says that it would be at that time it would be like this, that 2 people be in one bed, but one will be taken, the other will be left.
2個一齊推磨，2個一齊喺田間，一個被接去，一個被取下。
And 2 will be grinding grain, and 2 will be in the field, but one will be taken and the other left.
到底係咪一半一半咧？
So is it really half and half?
其實呢個比例響神嚟去搶救呢個羅德響呢個所多瑪和柯拉被火焚燒之前，都係呢個比例。
It's the same ratio that when God tried to save Lot's family.
其實神去到呢個城裏邊咧，係要拯救6個嘅人。
And God went to the city and wanted to save 6 persons.
你數一數啊，羅德佢太太、佢2個女同埋2個女婿，加埋6個。
So we take the count is Lot and his wife, his 2 daughters, and his 2 son-in-laws.
但到最深尾走得出嚟嘅，而最後嚟到安達佢哋嗰個地方嘅咧，係只得3個。
And the total of 6 persons, but at the end, those who escaped this calamity is only 3.
第4個例子就係當神拯救以色列人出埃及嘅時候，亦都係同樣嘅比例。
And the 4th illustration is that when God saved Israelites from Egypt, it's the same ratio.
哥林多後書前書第10章裏邊講俾你知道咧，神帶呢班咁嘅以色列人出埃及，佢話其實係多過半數嘅人都係神唔喜歡嘅，所以佢哋喺曠野裏邊係倒閉。
That in the 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5, it said that most of them, that means more than half of them, are not. God was not well pleased, so they die in the wilderness.
其實就係到最深尾咧，原來係除咗20歲以下嗰啲人，所有人咧係20歲以上嘅都喺曠野裏邊倒閉嘅。
In actuality, all those who came out of Egypt and is 20 years and older, they died in the wilderness.
呢個比例係好似好明顯咁樣，大約係一半嘅人。
The ratio seems to be very obvious. It's about half.
我哋要將呢咁嘅比例擺喺心裏邊先，因為呢個比例好重要嘅。
Let's keep this in our hearts first, because this ratio is very important.
原來唔係個個信徒都係會被提，係只有一半嘅人被提。
So the fact, so it indicated that in the rapture, only half of the believers will be taken, and the half left
另外一半
behind.
係被撇下過嚟。
And the other half will be left behind.
點解會咁樣咧？
How come it happens like this?
我相信咧，當被提嘅時候，如果我哋不幸係冇份嘅話，被撇下嚟嘅時候，我哋唔能夠怪神。
I believe that if unfortunately we are left behind at the rapture, we cannot blame God.
乃係因為我哋冇警醒。
It's rather that we were not keeping our watch.
唔係因為神拒絕我哋、放棄我哋、撇開我哋。
It's not rather God have gave up on us.
乃係我哋放棄我哋棄權。
Rather that we have forfeited and gave up ourselves.
頭先所睇嘅例子講到羅德嗰6個人。
And we look at the family of Lot.
嗰2個女婿，佢哋當天使所講嘅係戲言，
And the two son-in-law, they did not take very seriously what the angel said to them.
佢哋唔信咁嘅事情。
They don't believe that it will happen.
然後佢嘅太太係唔捨得放棄呢個所多瑪嘅富庶嗰個享樂，因為嗰個地方好似呢個伊甸園咁靚嘅喎。
And Lot's wife, she was reluctant to give up the affluence and the enjoyment in the city.
你記唔記得啊？當呢個亞伯拉罕同呢個羅德要揀去邊個住邊度，邊個住邊度嘅時候咧，羅德揀選呢個所多瑪，因為嗰度咧好似伊甸園咁富庶嘅。
And remember that when Abraham and Lot, they choose which way to go, and Lot choose Sodom because it was like the Garden of Eden.
所以呢三個人係唔捨得離開。
So these three, the son-in-law and the wife, they were reluctant to leave.
神拉咗佢嘅手出嚟，個太太嘅手，羅德嘅太太手出嚟，佢都係唔願意走嘅。
And even God had let them out of the city, and yet she was reluctant to go.
另外就係以色列20歲以外嘅，
And those who are 20 years and over.
其實喺曠野裏邊，佢多次都係想翻去埃及。
And many times they wanted to go back to Egypt.
佢哋寧願喺埃及做奴隸。
They were rather to be a slave in Egypt.
點解啊？嘛，嗰度起碼生活安定，豐衣足食，可以有好美味嘅食物。
Because at least they would have some stability and also food and clothing.
做慣乞兒就懶做官啦，而家唔想走啦。
And they are accustomed to what they had, and they don't want to leave.
所以神冇辦法啦。
So God had no choice.
佢幾次都想殺咗呢個摩西，另立呢個領袖，帶佢哋翻返埃及裏邊。
And many times they wanted their leader Moses to lead them back to Egypt.
我哋會唔會有咁嘅類似嘅情形咧？當主耶穌翻嚟之前，我哋根本係唔想走嘅。
Is it possible that we will feel the same way when God comes, that we don't want to leave?
啊，呢個5個童女愚拙嘅童女，當新郎嚟到嘅時候，佢哋係離咗隊，佢哋自己自暴自棄，放棄咗嘅。
And 5 foolish virgins, they have left the place and to get oil, and they have forfeited their choice.
有冇可能有一日當被提嘅時候，如果我哋被撇下喺呢當中嘅時候，我哋有類似嘅態度咧？
Is it possible that we are unfortunately left behind? Will we have the same attitude?
我好大嘅肯定就係，雖然我係希望所有嘅我哋所認識嘅，我哋整間教會人都係被提上空中與主相見，脫離呢個大災難。
And though it is my desire that everyone that I know that belongs to the church will be raptured and escape this great tribulation.
但係事實係唔可能咁樣。
But the fact is that it is not possible.
呢個亦都係我前嗰幾個禮拜，我點解要解釋呢個講到受印記嘅原因。
And it is also the reason why I talk about the mark of the beast the last couple of
係
weeks.
為咗一啲被留喺呢個地上高嘅人嚟到講嘅。
And I'm speaking to those who might be left behind.
因為被提要帶你去，你根本唔需要知道嗰啲咁嘢都可以。
And if you've been raptured, you don't need to know what happened afterwards.
但係被留喺呢個世界上高嘅人咧，係需要知道有咩發生。
But for those who are left behind, they need to know what happened.
有咩發生咧？當嗰時間，你睇到弟兄姊妹離開咗。
At that time, you being left behind, you saw your brothers and sisters left.
自己係被撇下嚟。
That they've been raptured and you are left behind.
你會恍然大悟。
And suddenly you will realize
知道自己係喪失咗個機會，會肯定咧係傷心欲絕。
that you lost your opportunity.
聖經裏面所講啊，哀哭切齒，因為你被係拒絕咗去外邊。
And the Bible said there will be a weeping and gnashing of teeth.
然後你又記得喎，呢個啟示錄第19章第9節裏面所講到咧，當呢啲咁嘅拜呢個受要人，你拜佢印記拜佢嘅時候咧，如果嗰啲去拜佢嘅咧，佢哋嘅份喺呢個火同硫磺火湖裏邊係受痛苦嘅。
And in the Revelation chapter 14, it mentioned if those who worship the beast and the image of the beast, they will be tormented with burning sulfur.
因為你接受聖經教導咁耐嘅，你知道咧呢件事係咁樣。
And you have been taught for so long that you know this is what will
你
happen.
知道錯咗一次，唔可以再錯第二次。
You know that you have missed it once, you cannot miss it again.
所以有一班人咧，喺你啟示錄第14章第9節咧，係會拒絕去拜獸嘅。
And for that reason, in verse 9, there are people who will refuse the mark of the beast.
以前冇咁聽神嘅話，但係而家要彌補自己過錯咧，我哋會好認真嚟跟從神嘅話。
And they need to redeem their mistake, and so they seriously listen to the word of God.
然後14章第12節裏邊所講到咧，喺呢個當中咧，嗰啲人咧係需要殉道先至可以嘅。
And also the front scripture said that they need to be martyred before them
因為
to be
佢哋唔
saved.
肯拜呢個拜嘅獸嘅印嘅時候，係佢哋咧係會需要被處死嘅。
And that you will be put to death if you refuse the mark of the beast or to worship the image.
但係聖經裏面所講啦，殺身體嘅唔能夠殺靈魂，所以咧我哋唔需要怕佢。
And Bible tells us we don't need to be afraid of those who kills our body.
然後第13節講啊，在主裏邊死嘅係有福嘅，因為佢息咗自己勞苦，作工嘅果效會隨着佢哋。
And in the following scripture, chapter verse 12 and 13, it said that blessed are those who died in the Lord, then they will rest from their labor.
點解嗰班人需要殉道先至會得救咧？
Why do they need to be martyred?
嗱，我哋講到靠恩得救噶嘛，但係點解佢哋需要殉道先至會得咧？
And we said that we are saved by grace, yet these people need to be martyred
其
for
實好
their
簡單
salvation.
嘅，因為而家呢個時間係恩典期，教會期恩典期。
And the reason is that because we are living in a time of grace.
我哋係靠神嘅恩典，係因為信佢而靠神嘅主耶穌基督寶血係得救贖。
And through His grace, that we believe in Jesus Christ and we are saved.
但係大災難嘅時限係恩典期係過咗嘅。
But during tribulation, this periods of grace have expired.
喺路加福音第17章第30節裏邊所講嘅，我哋係需要，如果要救自己生命嘅，需要喪掉生命，需要喪掉生命，必救自己生命。就係咧，原來響大災難嘅時候得救係需要用自己嘅生命嚟到換取嘅。
And in Luke chapter 17, verse 33 says, whoever tries to keep their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life will preserve it. In great tribulation, we need to lose our life to gain our salvation.
所以弟兄姊妹，假如有一日被提嘅時候發生，而你係被留喺呢個時候咧，千祈唔可以去拜獸嘅印記。
So if the rapture came and you're being left behind, and please do not worship this image.
但無論點樣，我希望提醒各位就係大災難其實係一個好難受嘅日子。
But no matter what, I want to remind you is the Great Tribulation is a very difficult time.
如果唔係神減少呢個日子嘅話，冇人係得救嘅。
If God did not cut it short, no one would survive.
所以我真係希望呢個教會裏邊冇任何一個人係被撇下嚟。
I really desire that no one in this church will be left behind.
唔單止係被撇下，仲有聖經裏邊，我上幾個禮拜解釋就係其中個災難就係呢個基督咧，使到咧人。係一家嘅家人係自己出賣自己。
Not only you being left behind, but at the time you will be betrayed by your family.
呢個好痛苦一件事情，有家歸不得。
It's a very hurtful and sad thing that you can even not return home.
然後被人捉到去見諸侯啊、君王啊、審判官面前嚟到解釋點解你咁嘅信仰。
And you be brought before the judges and kings and need to explain yourself.
無謂去經歷啲咁嘅嘢。值
But
得去咁經歷，其實
and it's not. We don't want to go through, and it's not worth it to go through these kind of
所以
suffering.
唯一逃脱呢個大災難嘅方法，當主耶穌嚟嘅時候，我哋係警醒等候佢。
The only way out of this great tribulation is that we keep watch of Jesus coming.
我哋係仰望等佢翻嚟，我哋渴慕見佢。
And we desire and lift up our heads and waiting for him to come.
免得佢嚟到好似賊嚟一樣，等我哋打到措手不及。
Lest he came like a thief that will be unprepared.
所以聖經呢邊所講，其實唯一個呢一個準備好嘅方法就係以馬太福音第25章裏邊24章裏邊所講嘅係我哋要警醒等佢，因為佢嚟到好似賊嚟一樣。
And that the only way is that we have to be watchful and keep watch because he will come like a thief.
但係警醒講就容易啊，做出嚟其實好難嘅。
It's easy to say that we are watchful, but that to be watchful is very difficult.
以往講呢樣嘢啲好容易，做亦都容易啲，但係睇而家嘅環境產生嘅呢個大危機係使到我哋容易打頓嘅。
And perhaps it's easier to be done in the past, but yet looking what's happening around us, it's very easy for us to doze off.
所以喺呢日子裏邊，就算乎最強嘅、最警醒嘅人都係會打頓嘅。
So in this environment, even the strongest and those who are most watchful, they could doze off.
其實呢一個童女嘅比喻，10個童女，10個因為新娘遲嚟咗之後都打頓咗。
And the 10 virgins, because the groom was late, and all of them dozed off.
所以今日我唔能夠講話我比你更加醒，我唔可以咁講，因為好可能我哋每一個都喺打頓嘅日子嘅當中、環境嘅當中。
And today I cannot say to you that I'm more awake than you are, but perhaps that every one of us have a time that we are tired and dozed off.
尤其是呢2年以嚟呢個疫情、呢個隔離之後，所影響嘅係好大嘅。
And especially during the time of pandemic, it really affect us in this area.
我做個比喻就係喺1994年咧，我帶一班青年人咧去西岸裏邊咧係好幾間教會裏邊咧係傳道。
And give you an example is that in 1994, I led a group of young people out west to preach the gospel.
當我哋離開咗 Winnipeg 之後咧，一直咁過去咧，都係好似直路一條咁過嘅。
And after we left the city of Winnipeg, we saw that there was a strict highway.
喺個公路裏邊咧，好似咧唔使轉彎咁嘅。
And so strict that you don't have to make a turn.
所有嘅環境都好似千篇一律嘅。
And the scenery is the same everywhere around you.
我記得咧有一度地方咧，見到前面一個大樹喺馬路嘅公路中間。
And I remember we saw a tree far ahead in the highway.
使咗好多分鐘。都係喺咁前，喺嗰個前邊嘅喎。
And we drove for many minutes, yet the tree is still there.
我諗起碼10幾分鐘啊，都嗰個棵樹喺前邊嘅。
And I think at least over 10 minutes, the tree was in front of us.
哇！原來咧，我哋以為呢個直嘅公路好容易揸啊，其實咧係好危險嘅。
We thought it's easy to drive on a very straight highway, yet is dangerous.
因為咧，當你所有嘅環境都係千篇一律嘅時候，你眼定定咁睇住一個目標嘅時候咧，好容易瞌眼瞓嘅。
And when you see that the scenery around you is all the same, and you fix your eye at one point, then it's very easy for you to doze off.
Sleeping behind the wheel can be fatal. 即係駕車瞌眼瞓嘅時候係好危險嘅。同樣喺疫情當中啊，我哋呢個隔離嘅當中。對基督徒嘅警醒咧，等候主隨時翻嚟咧，係一個好危險，因為好容易瞌眼瞓。
And during this pandemic is also the same effect for those Christians who are waiting for the Lord to come. It causes us to doze off.
而問題就係等於揸車一樣咧，瞌咗眼瞓你係唔知道㗎。
If you drive, you know that if you doze off when you're driving, you do not notice it yourself.
你不知不覺係瞌咗眼瞓。
And unknowingly just doze off.
我哋活喺呢個疫情嘅隔離嘅當中嘅時候咧，係有一個咧令我哋容易喺屬靈裏邊打頓瞌眼瞓嘅沉睡咗啲唔知道嘅。
And living in this pandemic environment that spiritually it causes us to doze off.
呢個疫情嘅當中，使到我哋呆咗2年啊。
And for 2 years that we have stayed home for 2 years.
嗰啲出去翻工啊之類嗰啲護理人員佢哋冇事，佢哋咧係冇咁樣問題。但係嗰啲其他啲咧當你咧邊個地方都唔使去啊，困咗屋企裏邊翻工啊之類嘅咧，係其實將你嘅意志同埋你嘅鬥志咧都係奪取咗嘅。
And for those who have to go to work or go to school, maybe they're a little bit better. But for those who have nothing else to do, it takes away their willpower and their fight.
尤其是當我哋退咗休之後，而家連摩都唔需要行啦，之類嘅周圍都唔需要去啦。咁咧係令我哋好容易苟且偷安、懶洋洋咁樣，失咗動機，失咗拼勁。
And especially those who retire and they have nothing to do, and now they can't even go to mall or go anywhere else. So it causes them to be lazy and slouchy.
我哋有藉口可以唔使做嘢，唔使出街。
I have an excuse not to do anything or even go out.
喺星期五我哋以前咧有呢個關愛團，
And on Friday we have our love care
而家
fellowship.
仲未恢復翻啦，咧放聖誕嘅假期。
And we're still on holiday right now.
但係當我哋有嘅時候咧，間中開會之後咧，我見到有啲弟兄姊妹未嚟嘅時候，我就要打電話俾佢哋，等緊你啊，嚟緊未啊咁啊。
But before that, occasionally I need to call people up when I don't see them show up online.
今日星期幾啊？
And they ask, what day is today?
原來連星期幾都唔記得咗，因為一個黑板生活咧係冇轉變啊嘛，冇節奏啊嘛。
And they don't even know what day it is because they lost their rhythm in their lives.
生活即係眼定定冇咗目標。
And they live a life that's aimless.
其實呢個隔離咧個破壞力咧係好大嘅。
The destructive force of this isolation is great.
呢個社會當中好多人咧出咗呢個情緒裏邊嘅問題。
And many people in the society develop mental illness.
憂鬱啦，我都憂鬱過啦，喺呢個疫情當中年紀當中之前。
And for example, depression, it happened to me a year or so ago.
我太太嘅憂鬱仲更加嚴重啲添。
And the depression of Linda is even more serious.
因為被關鎖咗2年啦，呆壞咗啦，連鬥志都失咗啦。
And we've been locked down for 2 years, and we remained have nothing to do for that time.
不知不覺呢個靈性裏邊打頓咗，失咗警覺都係唔知道。
And then unknowingly that spiritually we dozed off.
就係聖誕節之前嚇，我講到嘅時候講俾大家知咧，我精神個身體突然間好似出咗問題，平日成日瞌眼瞓。
And I also mentioned to you that something is wrong with me, that I doze off a lot of times.
有2個主日講道都冇氣冇力，都唔能夠集中精神。
And for some days I wasn't able to concentrate and focus on preaching.
多謝各位為我祈禱，感謝神咧，而家好翻。
Thank the Lord. Thank you that you pray for me that I'm better now.
但係事後我分析點解會有咁嘅事發生咧？我又要睇下醫生到底有乜嘢原因咧？
And afterward, I want to analyze actually what happened to me.
到最後嘅結論，其實就係同呢個被軟禁咗好有關係。
And at the end, I concluded that it has to do with this isolation.
你知道咧，一個平日好活潑嘅我，唔能夠停得嘅。我太太講：你可唔可以停下啲啊？今日你休息，你放假可唔可以停低？你休息下啊！我係唔可以咁做嘅。
Well, you know, someone like me who's so lively and vigorous, and I couldn't, I cannot stop and sit down. And even when I'm on vacation, people ask, "Can you stop and just do nothing?" I say, "I can't."
但係被關鎖咗2年啦，而家牛咗啦，好似呢個呆肉木雞咁樣。
And after this 2 years being isolated, that I have become dull.
仲有加上我，因為我搬咗屋之後咧，而家唔需要剪草啊，唔需要鏟雪啊，唔需要耕田啊，亦都唔需要用水做水培。
And worse, after I moved, that I don't have to cut the lawn, I don't have to shovel the snow, or I don't have a garden to tend to, or not even hydroponics.
隔離喺家嘅裏邊。
That I've been isolated and stay at home.
雖然由星期3返教會，但係覺得係英雄無用武之地，好似成為一個廢人一樣。
So even though that I go to church on Wednesday, Tuesday, but yet I feel that I was good for nothing and useless.
加上呢個團契又開始又冇咗啦，唱詩歌又冇咗啦之類嘅。
And also I didn't we don't have meetings and we don't have the singing anymore.
多見樹木，少見人。
That I see the four walls more than people.
所以到星期日翻上嚟講道嘅時候，成個禮拜都好少出個聲嘅。
So when I came back on Sunday for the 6 days before, I didn't speak much.
而家連兩夫婦坐喺度食飯嘅時候，都諗唔到話題出嚟同佢講嘅，因為冇嘢發生啊嘛，周圍。
Even when I sit down with Linda in dinner time, I have nothing to say because nothing happened.
所以呆咗啦。
So we become very dull.
嘔咗，台山話講嘔咗啦。佢講道啲出咗問題，最深尾
At the end, even I have problem issues when I'm preaching.
弟兄姊妹啊，我哋要留心啊。
Brothers and sisters, we need to pay attention.
原來呢個隔離使到我哋可以呆咗，將神賜俾我哋嘅功能咧奪取咗。
And through this isolation, that we lose the capability that God given us.
我哋缺少咗，而家開始缺少咗呢個活潑嘅生活，生活嘅多姿多彩嘅生活，係缺乏咗社交。
And that we lack this social contact, and we lack this this vigorous lifestyle.
缺乏咗呢個群體裏邊嘅聚會。
And we lack this corporate meetings.
使到我哋一班平日咧係唔可以坐定落嚟嘅人咧，係而家成為呢個呆子啊，係打盹都唔知道。
And that for make the lively and vigorous person become someone who is dull and didn't know that they doze off.
其實呢2年喺隔離嘅當中，我係為你哋各個人都擔心。
And actually during these 2 years of pandemic, I worry about each one of you.
因為想到假如主耶穌喺呢疫情當中翻嚟嘅時候，我恐怕超過一半人都唔會係被提。
That if Jesus do come back during this pandemic, that I'm afraid that more than half of us will not be taken.
因為我哋個動能，我哋個警覺力已經係消失咗啦。
Because our energy level and our alertness has decreased.
其實今日我哋唔需要講主耶穌被提，到底有冇一半人係被提？
Well, we don't have to tell you, rather that half of people will be raptured when Jesus come back.
宗教會嘅領袖其實心裏邊有數。
That the leaders of the churches, they know clearly in their hearts.
唔係就係我講啊，係好多嘅不同嘅牧師啊，教會裏邊嘅領袖啊，係知道當教會重開之後，到底教會裏邊有幾多人會再繼續係翻教會參加聚會、參加崇拜，或者有幾多人咧以後都唔會再翻嚟。
And many pastors, many churches leaders, not just myself, know that when they wonder about when the church are open again, how many people would come back to the church to worship, and how many will never come back again.
我哋知道呢疫情過後，其實係傷亡慘重。
We know that after this pandemic, the number of casualty and loss will be great.
極有可能真係好似呢個頭先所講被提嘅，係只係一半嘅人會翻嚟。
It's really very possible, just like the rapture, maybe only half the people will come back after the pandemic.
主耶穌所講嘅比例其實係差唔多嘅。
And it's very similar to the ratio that Jesus has mentioned.
我哋聖誕節最多人嘅時候係大約咧係一半人翻咗嚟教會。聖誕節係未再封教會之前咧，係有一半人翻嚟。
The last Christmas, before the last lockdown, about half of the congregation came back for the Christmas.
其他人就算你點請點嗌，佢都唔嚟噶啦。
And for the other half, no matter what you do, they will not come.
而教會嘅領袖係推測呢個疫情嘅隔離嘅後果，有冇可能就係呢個帖撒羅尼迦第2章裏邊所講嘅大幅度嘅離經叛道嘅情形終於嚟臨咧？
And many of the leaders, church leaders, speculate rather that this is the beginning of the Great Rebellion that's mentioned in Thessalonians.
And 不過解封之後，好快真相就會揭曉。
The truth will be revealed after the reopening.
有幾多咧會係好積極咁樣嚟到追求神、追隨神，亦有幾多係放棄咗咧
？And how many after will actively seek after God, and how many have given up?
埃及好啲啊，嗰度舒服啲啊，所多瑪舒服啲，因為嗰度有好好享受，可以喺屋企裏邊咧係躺落嚟就可以啦。
It's better in Egypt. It's better in Sodom. It's better to be at home and just sit there.
可以用 Zoom 參加教會就得啦。
I can attend church through Zoom.
如果呢個背道離經嘅情況係真係響呢個疫情會產生咁嘅情形咧，
And if this pandemic will incite this apostasy.
因為整體教會都知道，可能呢疫情過之後係會好大嘅教會裏邊減少咗好多人數。
The churches knew that after this pandemic, the number of congregation will decrease. 如果不幸而言中，呢個就係背道離經嗰個所講嘅大災難之前要發生嘅先兆嘅話。And if this unfortunately this apostasy becomes is really the sign of this great tribulation.
咁我哋知道其實大災難真係好快喺度。
Then we know in our heart the great tribulation is really drawing near.
呢敵基督真係好快要出現。
And the Antichrist will emerge shortly.
點解我哋會裹足不前，唔會翻去教會咧？
And why are we staying where we are and not go back to church?
因為冷藏咗2年。
Because we have been in cold storage for 2 years.
係唔容易解冰嘅。
Is not easy to be told.
你有冇知道咧？當阿嘉維知道啊，佢將佢陳嘉維咧，將佢個爸爸嗰個唔係爸爸，佢嗰個一個親人嘅一個車啊，係冷藏咗好多年嘅，整翻佢行翻，你知唔知用幾多心機啊？
And I guess one would know that to repair an old vehicle, it takes a lot of time and energy.
原來一架車啊，我嘗試過將個車咧冇用一個冬天，諗住夏天先再用。
And it happened to me once that I wanted to just keep the car in park the car in the winter and try to use it in the summer.
原來架車係要用喎，唔用嘅時候有好多嘢出問題嘅。
And actually, you need to use your car. If you don't use it, you find that you develop a lot of.
因為好多鐵係摩擦，係會生鏽嘅，生咗鏽之後咧係絕實咗唔喐得嘅。
And many mechanical parts, they are metal and they will rust.
嗰啲甚至乎嗰啲咁嘅鋼線啊、嘅 cable 啊，都係咧唔可以喐得嘅。嗰個 break 個 cable 啲可以frozen 咗，係生咗鏽。
And a lot of the cables may be stuck as well.
仲有好多咁嘅呢個塑膠啊，即係嗰啲咩啊，嗰啲乳膠嗰啲咧係會硬咗嘅，嗰啲咁嘅 oil seal 嗰啲咁嘅叫乜嘢啊？油塞係嘛？係會硬咗，會裂開嘅。
And anything that will make them rubber can be hardened or cracked.
所以有一次咧，當嗰趟我將我嘅車咧擺咗，我又買咗第架車嘛，所以咧諗住呢個車到夏天先再用啦。點不知冬天完咗之後再攞翻出嚟，哇！原來搞嗰啲搞唔喐佢嘅。
And I bought a new car, so I thought I used the old car just for the summer. But after the winter, the car would not start.
好啦，出咗去行咗之後，但係停咗紅綠燈之後，要再開車嘅時候，踩極油，佢都係唔去喎，然後要用好耐先至肯去嘅。
And even after I got it moving, I stopped at a stoplight and I pressed on the gas. The car did not respond.
咁到最深尾有一次嘅警察停咗我之後，佢話：你哋攞出去驗車啦。咁。
And finally, the cop stopped me and say, "Go have your car be examined."
我隔離嗰個人咧係做修車嘅，佢話你唔好去攞去驗啦。架車咧，佢話好車啲好多問題俾佢揾得出嚟㗎。呢架車咧，你最好劏咗佢啦。
And my neighbor who worked in the garage says that don't bring your car in for testing. It's a waste of time.
心裏真係劏咗。
So I just had to scrap it.
係之前使咗唔少錢喺度嘅喎。
And I have spent a lot of money, invested a lot of money in it.
係甚至乎咧係就係從rebuild 咗個 engine 嗰個車頭係再換個新嘅車頭嘅，嗰度都使咗唔少錢嘅，但係冇辦法，一定要劏啦。
I even replaced the engine, yet I still have to scrap it.
點解弟兄姊妹咁難踏出呢一步翻教？頭先祈禱啊Kim 所講係有陣時恐懼啦。
And why is it so hard for people to return back to the church after this?
驚到會染到疫情啦。
And maybe they were afraid
但係最大問題就係因為我哋冷藏咗呢個，我好明白，係好即係好同情我哋嘅咁嘅情況。
And perhaps mostly because we have been in cold storage for 2 years, and it's something that we understand and relate to.
我知道咧，舉個例子，我以前因為有耳仔少少不平衡緣故，我冇游水年幾2年啦，再翻去游水係好難去行嗰步嘅。
And I relate to you before that I had problem with my inner ears, and I had to stop swimming. But the time to come back when we had to restart is very hard.
凍啲又話凍啲，暖啲會暖啲，落雪又落雪，落雨又落雨，始終都行唔出嚟呢一步去翻去游水。
To find many excuses was it's too cold, it's raining or snowing, and I never took the step to go back to swimming.
所以呢個唔係因為你背道離教，嗱，只不過咧呢個人性裏邊有一個咁嘅枷鎖，呢個咁嘅擔子係好難嚟到去解得開嘅。
It's not because you have a heart to rebel against God, but rather it is a burden of our nature.
當教會重開嘅時候啊，而家未正式係點樣大幅度重開，但係當我哋一停止呢個 Zoom 嘅時候啊。但係你習慣咗2年冇出席聚會，要重新委身，你話幾難咧？我好同情你。
And you can imagine how it would be when we reopen and we stop Zoom, then you have to come back and you recommit yourself. How hard it would be.
因為我哋習慣好舒服啊，可以一起身打開個機就可以參加聚會啦。
That we're accustomed to the convenience and the comfort. We just wake up and we just turn on the computer and we're at the meeting. 就好似以色列人呢講，佢講話，我喺呢個埃及嗰啲都幾容易啊，喺我手裏邊攞個鍋可以食到嘢，唔使而家就又係走去攞啲嗎哪出去收，又要咧咁多嘅咁嘅又冇肉食之類。 And like the Israelites, they're in the wilderness. That while it's good in Egypt, I just pick up the food and I can eat it, but I don't have to go out and collect it and do other things.
做慣乞兒難做官
That we're accustomed to this comfort.
所以我哋好難嚟到行出呢一步。
And that is the reason why it's very hard for us to take that step to come back.
但係我要提醒大家。呢個就好似呢個溫水裏邊煮青蛙一樣。
But I want to remind you, this is like a frog that's in a water being boiled.
呢個擺個青蛙嘅溫水裏邊咧，雖然咧係好即係你將個水咧慢慢加升。
And you can increase the heat of the water with the frog inside.
覺得到升溫咗嘅。
But the frog do not notice the temperature of the water.
但係到最深尾啲水熱個頭咧，係將佢煮熟咗。
At the end, he was cooked by the water.
但係點解佢喺咁熱嘅時候唔跳出嚟咧？
But why didn't the frog escape this water before?
因為啲水係太溫暖、太舒服啦。
Because it's too comfortable.
最深尾死就死啦。
So if I die, I die.
弟兄姊妹啊
，brothers and sisters.
我哋要知道呢個漫長嘅隔離期係好快要結束。
And we know that this long period of time of pandemic is coming to end soon.
我哋當急之務就係我哋需要量度下自己屬靈裏邊嘅溫度嘅情況。
What we need to know now is we need to measure the temperature of in our spirituality.
我哋要想一想，我哋以前所有嘅衝勁喺邊度咧？
And we have to think back of the type of energy that we had before.
我哋動能，我哋打不死嘅精神，我哋愛主嘅熱切，我哋今日仲剩翻幾多我哋裏邊咧
？And how much of the drive, the energy, and the spirit and the fervence of God have we left after this time?
記得以前我哋教會裏，我成日提好讚賞大家，翻風落雨啊，打最大嘅落雪嘅，我哋都冇取消嘅聚會，好多嘅真係 die hard 嘅。 真係打不死精神嘅人咧，都係要翻嚟聚會嘅。
And I commended you, the congregation, many times that no matter the situation outside was the ice, was a snowstorm or was a windstorm or whatever, we never canceled our Sunday service, but they all come back.
但係當琴日睇到落咁大雪嘅時候
，but yesterday as I saw the snowstorm，
我知道。 弟兄姊妹，雖然有啲會諗住今個禮拜翻嚟嘅，都係唔好啦，唔使啦。
And I know maybe there are brothers who say maybe I'll come back this week, but when they see the storm, they say, well, maybe not this week.
因為我哋冷藏咗咁耐，我哋習慣咗，我哋好舒服喺裏邊嘅時候咧，我哋好難係再 出嚟嘅。
And after we've been in cold storage for so long, and that we're accustomed to this comfort at home, it's very hard for us to take the steps
所以
to
今日
come
我哋
back.
要反省下，到底我哋冷藏到邊個地步咧？我哋沉睡到有幾深咧？
And so we have to reflect on ourselves and see how cold we are.
係咪已經係不省人事咧？冇任何方法可以叫醒你咧？
Are we in a slumber so deep that no one can awake us?
弟兄姊妹，
Brothers and sisters,
到底我哋有冇預備去迎見主咧？
are we ready to meet our Lord?
政府快要解封啦，
And the government will soon open up.
而我哋係需要快係睡醒啦。
And all we need to come out of our slumber
我哋
quickly.
發咗2年嘅噩夢啦，
And that we have been in this nightmare for 2
我哋
years.
損失咗2年寶貴嘅時間。
That we have lost 2 precious years.
但係個問題唔係因為呢個世界上嘅嘢，
But the issue is not because of the world.
嗱係再瞓啲嘅時候咧，係越嚟越危險，
Because it becomes more dangerous if we keep on sleeping.
因為主耶穌快翻嚟，
Because Jesus is coming back soon.
新郎快要翻嚟，
The groom will be here soon.
大災難快要開始。
And the beginning of the Great Tribulation is coming.
我哋快睡醒係義不容緩嘅事情。
We have to wake up quickly.
稍為瞌眼瞓瞌耐咗，
And we doze off for a little bit too long.
好可能我哋突然間會發覺自己係被撇下落嚟，
And suddenly you will find that you are being left.
留喺呢個大災難嘅當中，
And you have to go through the Great
落喺
Tribulation.
呢個敵基督嘅手嘅裏邊。
That you'll be found in the hand of the Antichrist.
當我哋再沉睡落去嘅時候，我哋會係飲恨終身。
And we continue to slumber, then it might be our regret. in
結束嘅
life.
時候，我讀一段經文，羅馬書第13章第11節。
Conclude, I'll read a portion of scriptures in Romans chapter 13.
再者，你們曉得現今就是該趁早睡醒嘅時候，因為我們得救，現今比初信嘅時候更近了。黑夜已深，白晝將近，我們就當脱去暗昧嘅行為，帶上光明嘅兵器。
And do this, knowing the time that now it is high time to awake out of sleep. For now our salvation is nearer than when we first believed. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Therefore, let us cast off the works of darkness and let us put on the armor of light.
原來自己會識嘅呢個機。我哋會唱一首詩歌。
We'll sing a song.
Now how do I get to the grand piano?